What if the thing you've been searching for isn't some miracle pill or secret shortcut, but a quiet, almost forgotten ritual that happens in the stillness of night? A routine so simple it feels insignificant, yet powerful enough to reshape how you feel in your own body, how you connect with your partner, and how confidently you show up when intimacy matters most. Because sometimes the difference between doubt and undeniable presence isn't found in noise, but in what you consistently do when no one is watching, when the lights are low and your mind finally slows down just enough to listen to what your body has been trying to tell you all along. And that's where this nighttime oil routine begins, not as a trick or a quick fix, but as a deeply personal practice that reconnects you with sensation, awareness, and control in a way that most men have never been taught to understand. It starts with a shift in mindset, because performance is rarely just physical. It's emotional, psychological, and deeply tied to how safe and connected you feel in your own skin. And when you approach your body with tension, urgency, or pressure, it responds in kind, tightening, resisting, holding back. But when you approach it with patience, warmth, and intention, something changes. Something softens, and that's exactly why this routine works on multiple levels at once. Because it's not just about applying oil, it's about creating a moment where your body feels cared for rather than judged, explored rather than tested, and that alone begins to dissolve the hidden anxiety that quietly undermines performance for so many men. The choice of oil itself becomes part of the ritual, not because one magical substance transforms everything overnight, but because the act of choosing something natural, something that feels good on your skin, something with a subtle scent or texture you enjoy, signals to your brain that this moment matters, that this is not rushed, not mechanical, but intentional. And as you begin, the first contact is gentle, not rushed, allowing your body to register the warmth, the glide, the sensation spreading slowly rather than being forced. Because arousal and performance are deeply linked to sensitivity, and sensitivity thrives when there is no pressure to perform immediately, only permission to feel. And that's where most routines fail. They rush to the outcome instead of building the foundation. As your hands move slowly, deliberately, you're not just stimulating physically, you're training your nervous system, teaching it to associate touch with relaxations instead of urgency. And this is where a subtle but powerful shift begins to take place, because many men unknowingly condition themselves to respond quickly, to escalate too fast, to chase intensity instead of depth. And over time, this creates a pattern where control feels harder to maintain, where the body reacts before the mind can guide it. But in this nighttime routine, you reverse that pattern. You slow everything down. You pay attention to breathing, to rhythm, to how your body responds when you don't push it. And in that slowness, control starts to return naturally, not through force, but through awareness. Breathing becomes an anchor in this process, something most people overlook. Yet it has a direct impact on arousal and endurance, because shallow, fast breathing signals urgency to your body, while deep, steady breathing signals safety. And when your body feels safe, it doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, it doesn't try to finish quickly. Instead, it settles into the experience, allowing you to stay present longer. And as you combine this with the consistent, mindful use of oil, you begin to notice subtle improvements, not just in physical response, but in how connected you feel to your own sensations, how much more control you have over pacing, how much more confidence builds quietly in the background without needing validation from anyone else. This routine also creates a private space for self-awareness, something that is often missing in discussions around performance, because many men focus only on the external result, the moment with a partner, without ever understanding their own patterns, their own triggers, their own rhythm. And without that understanding, improvement becomes guesswork, inconsistent and frustrating. But when you spend time like this, consistently, without distraction, without pressure, you begin to map your own responses. You start to recognize the difference between early arousal and peak intensity. You learn how to stay just below that tipping point where control is lost, and that awareness is what ultimately transforms performance. Not any single technique, but the ability to stay present and in control throughout the experience. There's also an emotional layer to this that often goes unspoken, because performance anxiety is rarely just about the physical act. It's about fear of judgment, fear of not being enough, fear of disappointing someone you care about. And those fears don't disappear through force. They dissolve through repeated experiences of control and calm. And this routine becomes a safe environment where you experience exactly that again and again, until your mind's to trust your body, until confidence becomes something you feel internally, rather than something you try to prove externally. And that shift changes everything. Because when you no longer approach intimacy from a place of fear, your presence changes, your energy changes, and your partner feels that difference immediately. Over time, consistency turns this simple routine into a powerful foundation, because the body adapts to what you repeatedly do. And when you repeatedly practice slow, controlled, mindful touch, combined with relaxed breathing and intentional awareness, your default response begins to change. You become less reactive, more responsive, less rushed, more grounded, and this translates directly into real intimacy, where connection matters just as much as performance, where being present becomes more attractive than trying to impress, and where confidence comes from knowing your body rather than hoping it behaves a certain way. And perhaps the most overlooked benefit of all is how this routine strengthens the connection between mind and body. Because in a world filled with constant distraction, most people are disconnected from their own physical sensations. They move through experiences without fully feeling them, and that disconnection shows up most clearly in intimate moments, where presence is everything. And when you rebuild that connection through a simple, consistent nighttime practice, you're not just improving performance, you're enhancing your entire experience of intimacy, making it deeper, more controlled, more satisfying, not just for you, but for your partner as well. Because real intimacy isn't about speed or intensity, it's about awareness, connection, and the ability to stay present in the moment without losing yourself to pressure or expectation. And that's exactly what this routine quietly trains you to do, night after night, without needing anything complicated or extreme, just consistency, patience, and the willingness to understand your own body on a deeper level than you ever have before. As this routine deepens, something subtle yet powerful begins to unfold. And it's not something you force or chase. It's something you notice quietly building over time. A sense of control that doesn't feel rigid or mechanical, but fluid and responsive, because your body is no longer reacting out of habit. It's responding to your awareness. And this is where the real transformation begins to take shape, not in sudden dramatic changes, but in the way small improvements compound into something far more meaningful. Because each night you repeat this process, you're reinforcing a new pattern, one where your body learns to stay present longer, to hold sensation without rushing toward release. And that alone begins to change how you experience arousal on a deeper level. What many men don't realize is that sensitivity itself isn't the problem. It's unmanaged sensitivity combined with tension and urgency. And when those three things come together, control becomes difficult. But when you remove the tension and slow down the urgency, sensitivity actually becomes an advantage. It allows you to feel more, connect more, and stay engaged in the moment rather than being pulled out of it too quickly. And this nighttime routine gradually teaches your body how to handle that sensitivity without being overwhelmed by it, how to ride the wave instead of being overtaken by it. And that's where endurance begins to improve naturally without forcing it. There's also a rhythm that develops, something almost intuitive, where your movements, your breathing, and your awareness begin to align. And in that alignment, you find a kind of control that doesn't require constant effort, because it becomes second nature. Your body starts to recognize the signals before they escalate too far, giving you the ability to adjust, to slow down, to stay balanced in that space where pleasure is sustained rather than rushed. And this is the exact skill that translates into real intimacy, where pacing and presence matter far more than intensity alone. Over time, you may notice that your confidence starts to shift in a quiet but undeniable way. Not because you're telling yourself you're better, but because you've experienced consistency. You've built trust in your own body, and that trust removes a layer of anxiety that used to sit in the background. Because when you know you can control your response, you stop worrying about losing control. And that mental freedom changes everything. It allows you to focus on connection rather than performance, on your partner rather than your own fears. And that shift is often what makes intimacy feel more natural, more satisfying, and more genuine for both people involved. This routine also encourages a deeper awareness of tension in your body, because tension doesn't just exist in one place. It builds in your shoulders, your chest, your breath, and all of it influences how your body responds in intimate moments. And as you become more aware of these patterns, you start to release that tension consciously. You soften your breathing, you relax your posture, and in doing so, you create an environment where your body can function more smoothly, more efficiently, without unnecessary resistance. And that alone can significantly improve both control and endurance without needing anything external. Another important layer to this practice is patience, because the results are not instant. And that's actually what makes them lasting. Because quick fixes often create temporary changes, but consistent habits reshape your baseline. They become part of who you are, rather than something you rely on occasionally. And this routine, when practiced regularly, becomes exactly that. A baseline of awareness, control, and calm that you carry with you into every intimate experience. And over time, it feels less like something you do, and more like something you are. There's also a connection between this routine and how you handle anticipation. Because anticipation is a powerful force in intimacy. It can either build excitement or create pressure. And when you're not in control, anticipation often turns into anxiety, making your body react too quickly, But when you've trained yourself to stay calm and present, anticipation becomes something you can enjoy, something that enhances the experience rather than rushing it. And this shift alone can dramatically change how you experience intimacy, making it feel more expansive, more controlled, and more deeply satisfying. As you continue, you may also notice that your awareness of your partner naturally improves. Because when you're not consumed by your own internal pressure, you have more space to observe, to respond, to connect. And that's where intimacy becomes truly mutual, where it's not just about your performance, but about the shared experience, the rhythm between two people, the subtle cues that guide the moment forward. And when you can stay present in that space without losing control, the entire experience becomes richer, more engaging, and more meaningful. This routine, simple as it may seem, is quietly building all of these layers at once: physical control, emotional calm, mental clarity, and deeper awareness. And the longer you stay consistent with it, the more these layers reinforce each other, creating a strong foundation that supports not just performance, but overall confidence and connection. And that's what makes it so effective, not because it's complicated or extreme, but because it addresses the root of the issue, rather than just the surface. By the time this practice becomes part of your nightly rhythm, you begin to realize that the real benefit isn't just what happens in intimate moments. It's how you feel about yourself outside of them. More grounded, more in control, more connected to your own body. And that confidence naturally carries into every interaction, every moment of connection, creating a version of you that isn't driven by fear or pressure, but by awareness and calm. And that is something no quick solution can ever replicate, because it's built slowly, intentionally, and deeply within you over time. And as this practice settles fully into your life, it begins to reveal its most important truth, that what you've been building all along was never just about improving performance in a narrow sense. It was about reshaping your relationship with your own body, your own responses, and the quiet confidence that comes from truly understanding yourself. Because by now the routine no longer feels like a task you need to remember. It becomes something you naturally move toward at night. A moment where everything slows down, where you reconnect with sensation without distraction. And in that stillness, you begin to notice how different you feel compared to before. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. As if the noise that once surrounded intimacy has faded into the background, leaving behind a clearer, calmer presence that doesn't rush or hesitate. It simply responds. This is where the deeper impact becomes undeniable. Because when your body is no longer operating on patterns of urgency and tension, it opens up to a completely different experience of intimacy, one that is less about reaching an endpoint and more about staying fully engaged in the moment. And that shift alone transforms everything. Because when you're not fixated on finishing quickly or proving something, you naturally extend the experience. You become more attentive, more connected, more in tune with both your own sensations and your partner's responses. And that mutual awareness creates a level of intimacy that feels effortless, yet deeply satisfying. There's also a sense of control that now feels almost instinctive, not something you have to think about constantly, but something that's there in the background supporting you, allowing you to adjust your pace, your intensity, your breathing without breaking the flow of the moment. And that kind of control is what separates anxiety-driven performance from confident presence, because it allows you to stay relaxed even as arousal builds, to enjoy the experience without feeling like you're on the edge of losing control at any second. And that stability is something your partner can feel as well, even if it's never spoken out loud. What makes this transformation even more powerful is that it extends beyond the physical aspect of intimacy. It changes how you carry yourself, how you approach connection, how you handle vulnerability. Because when you've spent time consistently tuning into your body, understanding its signals, and responding with patience rather than pressure, you naturally become more grounded in other areas of your life as well, more aware of your reactions, more capable of staying calm under pressure, more confident in situations that once made you uncertain, and that ripple effect is often the most valuable outcome of all, because it reshapes not just a single aspect of your life, but your overall sense of self. By this stage, you also begin to understand that consistency was the real key all along, not intensity, not complexity, but the simple act of showing up night after night, even when it felt subtle or uneventful, because those small moments were quietly building something much larger beneath the surface, reinforcing new patterns, strengthening your awareness, and gradually replacing old habits that no longer served you. And that's why the results feel so natural now, because they weren't forced into place. They were developed patiently, layer by layer, until they became part of who you are. There's a kind of quiet pride that comes with this, not the loud, external kind that seeks validation, but an internal confidence that doesn't need to be announced, because it's rooted in real experience, in the knowledge that you've taken the time to understand yourself, to improve yourself, and to create a foundation that supports both you and your partner in a meaningful way. And that kind of confidence has a way of showing itself without effort, in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you connect, because it's no longer something you're trying to prove, it's something you simply embody. And perhaps the most important realization of all is that intimacy was never meant to be a performance in the first place. It was meant to be a shared experience of connection, awareness, and presence. And when you remove the pressure to perform and replace it with the ability to stay present, everything changes. The experience becomes richer, deeper, more fulfilling, not because you're doing more, but because you're finally allowing yourself to fully feel what's already there. And that's something no shortcut can ever provide. So when you look back at where you started, the uncertainty, the tension, the quiet frustration that may have been there, you can see how far you've come. Not through dramatic changes, but through consistent, intentional practice that gradually reshaped your body's responses and your mind's expectations, creating a version of you that is more in control, more connected, and more confident in a way that feels genuine and lasting. And that's the real power of this nighttime oil routine, not as a quick solution, but as a steady path toward deeper awareness, better control, and more meaningful intimacy, something that continues to grow with you over time, becoming stronger, more refined, and more natural the longer you stay committed to it, until it's no longer something you think about at all. It's simply part of how you experience connection, fully present, fully aware, and fully in control.